Life and death, it's all a dance. Talking love and giving chance. Laughs and tears, we're here to share. Join us now, we're always there.
Genna, who are we having on today?
We're having a fabulous, fabulous human on today who I met in a very wonderful ocean where I first learned to paddleboard, and he did a bit of a running man into the water. So therefore, he is one of my favorite people, and his name is Neal, and he happens to be related to you.
He does. He is my bro. Beth apparently decided that she needed to go into every single aisle because I said, oh, we're going to do our podcast at like 6 our time. And she was like, well, we need to go out and get food for dinner. She just needs to inspect every potato in a bag. She can't just.
I'm sure the same way.
Are you?
Yeah. Did I showcase my bruise today?
What the hell happened?
I hit a door, putting a door on at my mom's house, and it hit me.
Oh, there he is.
There's a special human.
Who's this little cutie?
There he is. Look at that cutie.
Hello.
Hello.
What's up? Wait, I want to make myself a cup of tea. I'm nervous.
Are
Why?
you?
I'm nervous to confront my trauma on a Tuesday afternoon, I guess.
Neal, will you be reaching out to your favorite life coach to be talking about this stuff? Hello.
Hi, Neal. Welcome to our podcast.
Hello. Thanks for having me. I'm so honored to be on Stars and Stripes Tea and Triumph.
So, Noelle, do you want to speak a bit, or Neal speak a bit of just like your idea of, well, tell people the relationship you have with him? I know he's your brother, but like a little more in depth of your relationship.
Yeah. So to give our podcast listeners a little insight, Neal was born when I was 4.5 years old, and I had to give up my black lab puppy in exchange for a little brother. So surprisingly, the relationship did take a turn for the better after that moment. And I would say we've always been close. I think when we were younger, the age gap seemed really big. And then let's be honest, once we reached our awkward stages, we didn't really have many options of who to hang out with. It was really
Oh, that's sad.
It was really just kind of the two of us.
And our cousins. It was like people that were like in our family that kind of had to hang out with us. And based on like the photos that Allison recently showed us, it's like, okay, whoa, like even that, I'm like, Allison, why were you hanging out with us?
It was a kind thing for them to do.
Generous, charitable.
So we have always been close. Before Neal was born, my mom was doing a survey on whether or not you should have an only child versus having like the benefits of having siblings for your children. My cousin Dana had said, because she's an only child, she said being an only child's amazing, but whenever the parents are gone and whenever it's just that person left, so they don't have that nuclear family. So that was a huge influence on my mom's decision to have Neal. And the irony of that is not lost on me. I don't know how I would have survived losing our parents without him. But I think, which I've talked to Neal about this, and Genna, you and I have talked about this. I think what I really want to discuss today is how differently we both grieved the same two people. Because I don't think either of us recognized that that was what was happening for like the first 9.5 years.
How long has it been since mom died? 12 years.
It took us a while. And when my parents were gone, and I don't know that I was like consciously doing this, but Neal travels a lot and he's always on the go. And I remember complaining to a friend of mine and saying, he never tells me where he is. He texted me one day on Thanksgiving, like a few years after both of our parents were gone. I was like, oh, hey, I landed in Mexico. And I was like, I didn't know you were going to Mexico. And I remember talking to somebody and being like, how can he not tell me? It's just the two of us. And she was like, he doesn't owe you anything. You're not his parent. He doesn't owe you that. Like, if you sit down and talk to him and say, hey, if something were to happen to you, it's just me. I think he would understand it more than you trying to be like a helicopter sister and trying to control the narrative, which I didn't realize until then. Neal, why don't you tell us a little bit about your take on the differences in how we handled the loss of our parents?
First of all, I will say I'm going to Mexico in 2 weeks, so just want to warn you. I'll be texting you.
It's fantastic.
No, and Kitty's the same way. Like when I went to Morocco a couple of years ago, I share my location with pretty much anyone that asks for it. And she's like, you have to tell me when you're going to Africa. She's like, I can't look at your location on like a Wednesday morning and see that you're suddenly in Africa without you telling me. Yeah, I mean, I think that's true, Noelle, what you said. I think we, from the start, have grieved very differently. Not even just grieved, but just dealt with, both the situations like losing mom or mom getting sick and then losing dad very differently, for better or for worse. And I think really only in the last couple of years have I been able to recognize that. I think there were a lot of times where maybe there was like tension between you and me, Noel. Sometimes you would be grieving in one way, or you'd be, God, posting on Instagram every day. I'm like, oh my God, please stop. And it's also why, it took me so long to read the book, just because I was like, you tend to deal with you're confronting these emotions every day. I think for a long time I was under the impression that I didn't have those same emotions until I wasn't dealing with them. I just wasn't dealing with them in the same way that you were. I didn't have them. I was like, oh, I'm good. But it's not the case. I think looking back, after mom died, I was like, oh God, what am I going to do? Am I going to stay in state college and keep waiting tables? Or no, I chose to apply to grad school in Europe, and not necessarily because I wanted to go to grad school. And it was purely just like, okay, here's a good excuse to go live somewhere else for a while. And I still don't look at it as me trying to like run away from or like escape those feelings, or like or like running away from confronting my own grief. But losing mom completely shifted my life philosophy. And I mean, I think I had it already. I think like when I started traveling in high school and then in college, I studied abroad in college, like I had already kind of, that the seed was already planted that I like wanted to explore the world and just kind of like live life to the fullest, and just, well, you said something the other day, like leaving no stone unturned, and I still very much feel that way. So I think like a lot of people saw it that way, and I think sometimes a lot of people do still see it that way, the way that I've chosen to live my life over the last 12 years. Some people are like, oh, like running away from your ghosts, whereas for me, I just think losing a parent, both at my mom's, I was 23 when my mom died, and also just like my mom was 59, like that is also very young. And so I think I'm like, whoa, like if I only live to be 59, like I want to pack as much into those 59 years as I can. So that's very much, I think, my philosophy. It's interesting now as I've gotten older, like 23 to 35 now, I still enjoy traveling, and I still like there's still so many places I want to see, and like I still want to, you know, live in Asia and do all these things. But now it's like, okay, fitting things in and like experiencing all these things. Some of the things that I want to experience are like seeing my niece or nephew as much as I can. It's like being in Chicago for like my friends, to meet my friends' kids, and like that quality time. It's now like on equal standing in my mind as like that experience is just as valuable to me as like going to Argentina. So it's interesting to see how that has shifted now, and I definitely think I'm currently struggling with like trying to find that balance now and being like, okay, I still want to do these things, but I also want to be present for the people in my life. I want to be in Buffalo to spend time with Russell, and I want to go to his games, but I've kind of shot myself in the foot because at this point I've created like really important relationships.
Everywhere.
I'm like, oh my God, I would love to be in Buffalo all the time to be with Russell. And I would love to be in Pennsylvania all the time to be with like Mike and Tay and their kids. I would love to be in Chicago all the time and be with Kitty. And I would love to be in the UK. I would love to be in Switzerland with Alice. So again, I've kind of shot myself in the foot a little bit there because now I'm torn between all these places.
It's interesting, Neal, because I think in what you're saying, you and I, and maybe it was just sort of getting to a point where we could acknowledge that each of us were dealing with it differently, but like part of me probably not understanding and maybe also being fearful that you were running away. And since then, I think you and I have had some really good conversations where it is really clear to me that that's not what you're doing. But I think that I didn't understand it. I didn't have a passport until 2018, 2019. And so now I look at you and I'm like, "Oh my God, that's so cool." Like he just went to Morocco. Like I don't have the travel bug the way you do, but I definitely see, since traveling abroad for the first time and now living in England, I get more of your perspective now. And it's interesting because I think without realizing it until you just said it, you maybe are getting more of mine, because I was very much like the relationships were what kept me in Florida and in like sent me back to Pittsburgh. And you also you were at a different stage in life when you lost mom. Like, I think about this a lot, and I was mostly grown, like, I wasn't ready, and I don't think you ever will be, but mom had watched me graduate, like, I was living on my own in Florida, and you were in the phase of you were in college still, you were about to graduate. No matter what, I was 4.5 years older, so I had those 4.5 more years of, maturity. I use that word loosely.
I wouldn't actually use that word at all.
But also, I remember it's whenever you said the thing about me posting all the time, I remember exactly the picture that it was that I took when mom first got sick. It was you, it's gonna sound creepy, watching her as she as she slept on your Power Ranger sleeping or your Power Ranger pillow, and you saying, "Noelle, this is a private moment. Don't take a picture of this. This is a moment between mom and I." And I wonder, do you think that I have respected your privacy? Because obviously I don't really think that I take that into consideration enough. And I find that with Beth because the British are so like reserved. And I wonder if there have been times where you felt like, even in my book, I never cleared any of the things that I put in there with you. Like, and it's a lot of personal anecdotes about your life too. So do you feel A, that my book was fair, and like, was there anything that you wished I wouldn't have put in it? And B, do you think that I was respectful of like your need for privacy as much as my need to grieve openly?
I mean, I definitely think, yeah, like earlier on in the grieving process, like, a few years after we lost our parents, like there were definitely moments where I was like, okay, it's too much for you to be sharing. Whether it's about whether it's explicitly about me or not, I'm like, these are like feelings and stories that like I wouldn't necessarily share to like my Instagram followers. So like, yeah, I definitely felt that in the past. I think you've gotten a lot better to the point where now sometimes I'm like, okay, you posted this and none of the pictures are of me. I'm like, now you post things and it's like, okay, it's just you and mom and dad, and I'm like, okay, where am I?
Where am I?
But in terms of your book, I mean, I think reading it, I was almost like, wow, like you are so complimentary of me. Like almost to a fault where I'm like, I'm reading it and I'm like, okay, like this shows me in a really good, like mature light. But it's interesting because I'm like, that's not how I saw it. That's not how I experienced it. It didn't feel that way at all to me, that I was acting maturely or like dealing with things well. Like especially I think about, especially after losing dad, I feel like that year after dad died, it was like very, in retrospect, like very dark for me. I was like,
I remember you saying that.
self-destructive is like way too strong of a term, but I think about like being back in state college, going through dad's house that summer. I was partying hard. I was like acting like a college student. I was just not acting maturely at all. So I don't think you've crossed any lines with the book or like with your posts. I think I expressed in it, whether in a healthy way or not to you, like that some of the things that you were posting were making me uncomfortable, or like I was, and I think you've respected that. It's interesting, like my friend whose dad just died of glioblastoma, like the same cancer our mom had. I sent him a copy of the book in Mexico, and he was reading, and he's like, or like right after his dad died, very recently, a few weeks ago, he was like, "How did you like get back to normalcy afterward?" And I was like, "I couldn't tell you. I don't remember the time after my dad died. Like, I don't know what I was doing. I don't know where I was physically. I'm like, no clue." Yeah, it's interesting. Reading your book, I thought would be harder for me because I thought it would force me to confront things that I were maybe a little bit uglier about myself and my own process, and I didn't feel that way at all, which I think is a little bit, should should feel validating. I mean, it feels validating for me, and I think it should also feel validating for other people to hear that from me, and to read your book and be like, okay, like you may feel like you are an absolute mess and you're dealing with this in such a way that people are looking at you and being like, God, this guy is not doing well. But someone else can look at it and see someone who like appears very strong, appears to be like handling things very well. So yeah, it's interesting, like to kind of have my own experience and then read about my experience through your eyes. I prefer the book to the Instagram posts, I will say.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say you prefer the book to your real version of you. I'm like,
That
what?
too. That, well, like I said, I still don't really know what I was up to that Like 2015, I'm like, what was going on?
Okay,
Yeah,
you need it.
I
You
could look
know,
through Instagram and probably tell you.
you
true.
probably could. Did you see that, Noelle, when he was going through that? Like, did you see any of that self-destruction, or however we want to say, or that way he was grieving?
Not until, and interestingly, Genna, I think you had come along, like I had met you maybe shortly after. Oh, actually, I guess it was significantly after that, but I didn't realize it until he had told me. And I don't think I realized how distant I was from the whole process. Like Neal went through my dad's things by himself. And that was also my mom's stuff. Like that was both of their belongings. And I don't think that it was like a conscious decision for me to try to avoid it, because that was sort of when I lived in Florida. I think I always did that. I was like, oh no, sorry, I have to work. Like, can't make it back for this, can't make it back for that. Like, because that was my priority. But I didn't realize until after how much I left him with to go through and to deal with. And I don't know, because we were so different in how we expressed our emotions. I don't know how that would have worked if we were both going through, because I would have kept everything and Neal would have fought me on everything, and that would have probably caused some conflict.
Like all the stuff that I got rid of, to think about if you had all that stuff in addition to all the junk that you insisted on sending to England, like you just can't have that much stuff. No one person should have that much stuff.
Well,
Look at her. She's
I
like,
will.
"Oh."
I hope that the person who got my old yearbook is having a great summer.
I'm sure they're having a kick-ass summer. But also interestingly, like I think back sometimes like, oh shoot, I wish I had kept that. I wish I'd kept that. Why didn't I? I was so ready to just like purge myself of everything that didn't like serve me in that moment. And now I wish I had, maybe not to your extent. Like I wish I had someone who would like tampered me down a little bit to be like, oh, maybe you want to keep that, or maybe not. Because I mean, at this point, it's been 10 years. Like I probably would have gotten rid of it at another move or another like stage of like
Right.
of getting rid of my stuff. But
I am so envious of your minimalistic outlook. The longer I hold on to all this shit that I don't need. Beth and I are trying to like go through old clothes, and we're both as bad as each other, which Neal can attest to. And so I'll have a pile and be like, this is it. We're going to donate this. And she will go through it and be like, I might look really good in that.
I do that with Russell. He's like, I'm getting rid of these. He has like 40 pairs of shoes and he's getting rid of a pair. I'm like, wait, I could wear those. He's like, you don't. I'm like, you don't want those anymore? I'll wear them.
Yeah. One of my favorite stories about Neal and my dad's like dynamic is Neal used to get on his case because my dad was also a pack rat. And so Neal would get on his case about like getting rid of stuff. Do you remember this, Neal? My dad had like a closet full of clothes that I want to say for years, Neal was like, it's time to take these to Goodwill. Like you need to get rid of this stuff. And I think Neal was probably the one that actually ended up doing it. And my dad was telling us the story and he was like, that little shit came home with a shirt and said, look at this great shirt. And it was the one that was in my closet all that time. And you had that forever, didn't you?
I still have it. I mean, it has like, I can't really wear it because it has like a big hole in the back. But like, yeah, my dad always joked because I like insisted that he donate all this stuff. And then I, being like, I love to thrift. So like I would then go to Goodwill and then ended up like buying the shirt back.
That's amazing.
But it's interesting, like even now, like as I've gotten older and I'm like, my style, Noelle, I feel like I've had the last few months, I've really like, I've gotten a new style. I don't know if you've noticed. But I'm dressing so much like dad. And I'm like, wait, I should have kept all those like button down shirts. I'm like, I'm wearing loafers. I'm like, I really should have just kept all the stuff of dad's, because now at 35, I'm dressing exactly like him. But again, like I wouldn't have kept those things even if I hadn't gotten rid of them up front. Like I wouldn't have kept them for the last 10 years. But it's interesting to see myself gravitating towards something, or like certain styles or shoes, like I said, whatever. And then I look in the mirror and I'm like, okay, I look exactly like my dad. And it's not intentional, but it's almost like it makes you wonder, like kind of the like nature versus nurture thing. And I'm like, is this like genetically in me to like wear loafers and button down shirts tucked into shorts? Like, where'd that come from?
Just like Noelle is now dressing like an 80-year-old over there.
Genna, you've got to be grateful for what we have, because that is a huge improvement. Beth and I are very grateful for the progress that we've made with Noelle's like colorway selection and like her color.
Oh, I love the color. The color is gorgeous on you. I do love the colors, 100%.
I love that it's not neon.
Neil, she did
Oh.
reference herself as an 80-year-old woman earlier. That's why I brought
I love it. I'm into it. What I will say though is like you have definitely like found your style, I think, as well. And I don't know you when you were talking about like how difficult it is for you and Beth to get rid of things because like you are the same way. Like you have definitely found your tribe there. For better or for
Uh-huh.
worse. I'm like they that you guys do kind of enable each other with the pack ratness of
Big time.
I get rid of everything. I'm just like, it's
I
gone.
want to be more like that.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it does bite you in the ass sometimes whenever you're like, where's that shirt that I wanted to wear you had in
Yeah.
your head? And like, yeah, I gave that away.
Right.
It's all gone.
Well, now it's interesting because like now for the last like 3 years, I've been kind of like between the States and England, and a bunch of my stuff is in my friend's basement in Pennsylvania. And I was just there like a week ago, and I'm like, where did all this stuff come from? Like the stuff in your basement has now doubled, and I think the problem is I kept things. They're in the basement, but then I'm like, oh, where? I don't know where that is. I must have gotten rid of it. So then I buy a new one, and now I have like 3 of these things all kind of piled up in this basement. So if you love something, let it go, and if you buy it again, then you know.
That literally could be a
Yes.
motto in life. If you love something, let it go. If you
Beth
buy it again, there you go.
Beth was trying to explain some philosophy to me yesterday when we were like, "Oh, we really should start to get rid of stuff." She was like, "I found something that said, if this couch was covered in poop, would you keep it or would you get rid of it?" And I was like, "What?" And she was like,
Like,
"Yeah,
would
like
you invest in the cleaning?
yeah." She was like, "Would you?" And I was like, "Well, I mean, it's a couch, so yeah, probably. Like, we'd clean it. It's just poop. Just deep clean it." And she was like, "Okay, what about that book on the floor?" And I was like, "No, not if it had poop on it." And she was like, "All right, well, I guess we get rid of the book." I'm like, I don't think that this is. I'm not sure where this philosophy came from, but I don't think it's a good one for us.
Get rid of the book.
This is the one you wrote, then you keep that book.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Other than that, get rid of
That
it.
was actually her way of saying my book is shit.
It's like, oh, I guess we're getting rid of your self-published book. Goodbye. Into the bin.
Oh my god.
Shame. That's a shame. Well, I think the 2 of you, I think it's funny because hearing you talk about that, Noelle, I can remember conversations that you and I have had, like, over time with Neil and his traveling, and yours is more of like I kind of there was, like, an undertone of not a fear, but, like, a protective, like, I don't want him that far from me kind of thing.
Definitely.
Well, did you ever pick that up, or were you always think it was more of like, "She's bothering me and needs to control where I'm going?"
I never felt bothered by like you being a helicopter sister at all. I was never like leave me alone. Like I'm just gonna do whatever. Like I'm happy to share with you where I'm going, what I'm doing. I never really got the sense that it was like a fear of like distance because I think for a long time we were living far apart, and like it's so weird to think about now when I was in grad school and then I moved to Chicago and you were living in Florida for 10 years. Like we saw each other like once a year, maybe, if
If
that.
that.
And now that I've like had the luxury of being able to work remotely and like spend so much time in England, I'm like, whoa, I cannot imagine seeing you so infrequently or like not having you
Yeah.
like right across the courtyard for like 50% of the year. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's only within the last couple of years, maybe like since you moved to England, oddly enough, that I'm like, okay, now I get it. Like I also don't want to be that far. You know what I mean? Like I used to think like, oh, I'm gonna move to Asia and I'm just gonna live there. But now I'm like, I could go for a few months, maybe a year, but like I can't imagine being away from not only you, but like the other people that I consider my family for that long. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I also
Right.
think you have become Beth's family's amazing because I think you've become a part of it. Like, so it's definitely like when you're not here, like when you weren't here for New Year's, it felt weird. And like everyone was asking about you and you're their Uncle
Yeah.
Neal. Like it's just like when we were kids, like and we were, had our cousins, aunts, and uncles who maybe weren't ours, but like we grew up with them. So I definitely think that's a huge thing too, is like because you are so intertwined now in that mix. It's very special, I love
I
it.
love it too. Like I remember like when I was leaving, when I had moved out of Russell's place in Buffalo, and I had like moved stuff back to State College. Like I always tell people when they ask me if I'm close with Beth's family, I'm like, oh yeah, like when that happened, Beth's mom was like, tell him to come home.
She did say that the other day. She was like, I think my mom, especially, I mean, David obviously as well, but Beth did say that. She was like, I think my mom does look at him as like one of her like extended children. And that's, to me, that's amazing. It's weird. I don't think that there would be a more perfect way for somebody to come in, show me, hey, I care about you a lot and I will, be an addition to this, but I'm not trying to step in, and I know that I'm not ever going to replace what you've lost. And that's been an unspoken thing. And again, they've also dealt with loss as well. I also recognize that I'm sitting in someone's empty chair. So I think that comes into play too.
You are destroying whatever candy that is that you're eating.
Leo
What
the
are you-
lion.
What the hell is
It's like
that?
a Percy Pig. It's Aldi's version of Percy
Oh,
Pigs.
yeah.
I don't even know what Percy pigs are. I've
I know,
never.
you are missing out. We're gonna have to get you some Percy Pigs
So like gummies.
No,
on
they're
another
not. They're
level.
not just gummies. That's insulting.
Oh. What? Oh, okay.
They're just like they're like foamy. I wouldn't know how to describe them.
Well, clearly that is not a description that I would want to dive into. Give me one of those foamy pigs to eat.
Percy
Oh no,
Pig.
that's a lion. That's a lion.
This is Leo the lion.
But they taste the same.
No,
Hmm.
they don't. The little version, the hippos don't
No.
taste the same.
But they're delicious.
Wow, I feel like I'm missing so
You are.
much.
You are. Neal, thank you so much for joining us. We like to end every. Oh, are you not ready? You look
feel like-
offended.
We just started. There's so much more to say.
What, Neal? What more would you like to say before we boot you off of the little screen?
Oh, I don't have anything off on the top of my tongue. I just kind of felt like we were having a good time.
That's sad, Noelle. Look what you just did. That's why you're the death side of this and I'm the life. See, I'm bringing him back in. You're like, we're done. Aw, Neal, we loved having you.
It's been such a joy.
How are you doing now with everything? After reading the book, did it bring anything up? How are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing well. I mean, I think, like I said, I think my life philosophy is very much the same as when I was 23. In that, like, life is short and I want to experience everything I can. But like I said, like, now that people in my life are having kids and like settling down places, I'm like, that also, like, I want to go to, the suburbs of Chicago just as much as I want to go to Taiwan. You know what I mean? So
Right.
now it's a matter of like balancing those things and making time for both. And I'm very lucky that, like, right now my job allows me to that flexibility. I don't see that ever changing in terms of like I said, like philosophy and priorities. Like, that has shaped me in a very permanent way, and I'm very grateful for that. I as we were saying, like, some people may look at it as like running away from things, but for me, when I go somewhere, when I travel or like book a trip, or I go somewhere new and I'm traveling alone, I'm like, man, like the first international trip I did when I was like 14, I went to Europe with my church. And then I studied abroad in Ghana when I was in college, and like my parents were so supportive. Like, it was nothing but support. And they, like, my mom always talked about like my dreams and schemes. This idea of like me, I'm always thinking of like, ooh, like what's this new cool thing I can do? What's this like cool adventure I can go on? And if anything, it's the opposite of running away. Like, I feel like a communion with my parents when I do things like that. I feel closer to them by living my life to the fullest. That sounds so trite and cliche, but that is kind of how I feel about it.
I actually that's what I was getting at, but just listening to you speak about all of this, that's exactly what I was feeling. Like, people want to look at you and be like, "Oh, he needs this or he needs this and he's running away from this," rather than saying, "No, he's doing this because he wants to live a full life. He wants to have them looking down on him, going to this place, and just smiling." And that's what I get from you traveling, not so much he's running away. You can't truly run away from a parent's death. You could be anywhere, they're always with you. That thought is always with you. Something is always going to remind you of it. So to say that you're running away, to me at least, does not make sense. I see it exactly as you do, as just like wanting to take as much in as you possibly can.
Yeah. And it's for better or worse. Like, wherever you go, that your parents' death or any loss that you have is with you. Like, like I said, for better or worse. Sometimes that means like what I was saying. Like I think of my parents when I'm traveling, and I'm like, wow, like this is what they really would have wanted for me. And sometimes it's like I'll have a moment that like reminds me of them in a sad way, and that's okay too.
So to be clear for everybody that worries about you and your travels, you're still experiencing everything with your parents, the positives, the negatives, and you're still living your life. And the sadness is not bringing you down or causing you to run away. It's just to experience.
Yeah, I will say, reading Noelle's book on my journey to Puerto Rico, and of course, sobbing, had to like close the book several times during the chapter when my mom died. Like just me, and of course, it's like me and Russell like sitting on a plane. He's like working, he's like connected to Wi-Fi, watching like recruiting videos, and I'm like sobbing next to him. I'm like, have to put this book away for now. And I told my friend, like my best friend in Chicago, that I read it because she's also reading it right now, much more like slowly than I am. She's not speeding through it, but she's like, that is so pick me energy. You're reading this emotional book on the plane. Everyone's looking at you.
That's fantastic.
Maybe not the right venue for it, but
That's so something I would do though. Like, or in the middle of like somewhere where everybody is, and I'm like in a coffee shop and I'm just literally like, that's the problem. I need to pick the time and space. That's what it is. So I want you each before we go. This is what I'm throwing out there. And then Noelle, you can do your little thing. I want you each to tell each other what, oh, wow, that was big, Noelle. What, as far as your parents go, since that was our topic, what do you think they would be the most proud of each of you?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think for Neal, for sure, it would be how he's living his life. I love the fact that you one day will think, I'm going to go to Morocco tomorrow, book a flight, forget to take a COVID test, and then come right back to Lowestoft. Like, I love that you are not afraid of any of that stuff. Cause to me, again, like it still is some of the idea of it still is really scary, but just like you said, like that is exactly what mom and dad would want for you. And it makes me laugh too because I can hear dad like being like, I don't know where the hell your brother is, or like, oh, he's on one of his like other, like anytime you're saying, oh yeah, I'm just gonna go to Morocco tomorrow, or like, oh, I guess I'll go to Switzerland, just like sort of like a laid back decision that for a lot of people it would be like this once in a lifetime trip that they've saved for like years to do, that you just decide like on a whim, I guess I'll go there tomorrow. It's exactly what mom would have done. And so I think she would be proud of the fact that you have her spirit of always wanting to reach for more. And for dad, he would definitely be like, he would definitely make fun of you. He would be bragging about you, but also sort of like judging you.
for sure. That is definitely true. I mean, I could say the same for you. I think the inverse of me. I think a lot of your younger life, I don't mean this in an insulting way, but like I think you played it safe a lot. Like
Definitely.
when mom and dad split up, you stayed at dad's,
Yeah.
like rather than like kind of disrupting your life more than it needed to be. You stayed at dad's where you were already living. In college, you lived at home. You kind of like you kept working at Giant. Like stick with what you're comfortable with, and that's great because I do the opposite. Like I'm like mom, where I'm like, ooh, I'm comfortable, time to leave. Whereas you tend to be the opposite, and that's great. But I think like I never would have thought that you would be the one to like move across the ocean and like settle down somewhere. And I don't know if mom and dad would have expected that either, but like you have done it so wholeheartedly. You've made the move and you have like created a family there, both with like your actual family, your wife and her family, but also like you've created a community there with like Joe and me and Sophie and Dan. Like you have created a life there that I think was, and I know for a fact was scary for you to do. Like that was a
Yeah.
huge leap for you to make, but I think like that's amazing. I think mom and dad would have been both surprised and very proud of that. And then also just like this. I mean, yes, you've always kind of like put yourself and your emotions out, wore them on your sleeve, and put them out there for the whole world to read. But like the fact that you assembled your writings into a book, and now you and Genna have like created this additional platform to like continue, like, rather than have this book, which is kind of like a finite, kind of succinct, not succinct, but a finite thing that you've created, and like this is like a time capsule of like what I was feeling then, and now you've created this, which is a platform to like turn that into a continued and ongoing discussion of growth with both yourselves and with other people. Like, that's incredible. And I certainly couldn't do that. I was terrified to get on here today. Like, I was terrified to even do one episode. So the fact that you're taking this on, I mean, I think it's very admirable. And I think mom and dad probably would have looked at it the same way I do, where they're like, well, I could never have done that. I could never put myself out there that way. I wouldn't have the
Drive.
and that yeah, just like that kind of self motivation, I guess. And so yeah, I mean, I know mom and dad would be very proud of you for that. I know I'm very proud of you for it. Just as long as you don't like make me do too much. Just don't ask too much of me.
I think it's like
I love that.
funny that you just said drive and like motivation and like something about like self-starter whenever I literally binged watched 20 seasons of Grey's Anatomy one year because I was doing so little. So I don't know if I'm like really that much of like a driven like
It's in the past, Noelle. That's in
It
the
is.
past. This is today. Look what you're doing today.
no.
It's all
Thank
part of the same, it's all part of the process. You know what I mean? Like that stage of it led to this. And also like at that point you had, like I said, you had moved across the country into like something that was totally foreign and uncomfortable to you, and you found things that gave you comfort, and I think that's perfectly healthy. And I think, like I said, like the community that you've created for yourself there is like speaks for itself. You know what I mean? Like, yes, you made time for 20 seasons of Grey's Anatomy, but you also made time to create like really important relationships. And yeah, so I say wear that proudly on your sleeve, the fact that you were able to catch up on Grey's Anatomy from not having seen a single episode to,
That's impressive. I'm impressed.
I mean, it's extremely impressive, and I'm very proud of you for that also.
Thank you so much. So Neal, we always like to all 5 episodes we've loved to end on a glimmer, which is the opposite of a trigger and something that opposite of a triggers you.
I actually have one today since you always make me go first.
Good. Go on, Genna.
And it actually just popped into my head. So I'm impressed with myself. So mine is, in the last week, I've gotten a bunch of videos from one of the little babies that I fostered. He's a little over 1 now, and his mom is the most fantastic person, and she loves to send me videos. We talk at least once a week. So I got a bunch of videos of him being the wild man that he is. And I was able to see a picture of one of the babies that I fostered recently. And she's grown up even since the last like month that I haven't been with her. And it's just the best feeling to see them thriving and to know that, I took a part in that. So that is definitely my glimmer for today.
Well, I'm gonna have to change my glimmer. What is my glimmer gonna be that's gonna compare with Jenna's? Nope, I'll just stick
This
with the one
always
I was gonna go
happens.
with.
But remember when
Yeah.
I said big C?
Yeah, you did say big Edie one
Yeah.
time. Yeah, that was after I said, "Oh, I felt my baby move for the first time," and Genna said, "My glimmer is
Right,
that I
so
made
I
big
mean-
Edie."
I made big C well.
Oh, that's
That's all I
great.
can make. Thanks,
Good
Neal.
for
That's
her.
all I can make.
My glimmer is so I used to think that I enjoyed running, but then kind of gave it up. And then my pregnant wife signed me up to run 50 kilometers in 5 days at the end of March because she can't. So, and that's for Blood Cancer UK, which is unfortunately what her brother passed away from, and then her friend. So I really can't not do it. But I went out to run last week and could only manage like 2 kilometers before walking, and I made it 4 today with radar. So we're back up to 4K.
Awesome.
Thank you so
Awesome.
much. Yeah. 50 kilometers in 5 days is gonna be terrible, but it's fine.
You got it. I'll do it with you. I don't know what 50 kilometers are. Actually, tell me what 50 kilometers are before I commit to doing this with you.
50 kilometers is like 32 miles
42 miles?
in 5 days, isn't it? Because like a 5K
Yeah.
is 3.2 or 2 point.
Okay, I'll do that with
3.2.
you.
Yeah, it's
Min.
basically like a 10K a day, which is what, like 6.2 miles a day. But you can walk
Min.
it. Like Beth keeps saying, "Oh, you can walk it."
Yep.
I really want to try to run it because I think it's important. Like I think it's a great thing to like push yourself, and especially if it's in honor of somebody else. But yeah, that's gonna be a long 5 days.
I'll be there with you. I'll do it.
Perfect.
Go ahead, Neil. It's your turn.
Okay, well, one thing is that when I first moved to Chicago, gorgeous, beautiful city, safe city, my apartment got broken into once or twice and had a few like really random, mostly like
Old Spice deodorant, right?
spice deodorant, like really like nothing things stolen. But one thing that was stolen was my dad's class ring, his like college class ring from Pitt, which I mean I never recovered, but I mean emotionally I'm fine, but like I never recovered the item.
Right. Thank
My,
you for clarifying.
yeah, you're welcome. When I went to Pittsburgh to spend Thanksgiving with my family, and my aunt gave me a bag of like what turned out to mostly be like junk jewelry, like random like Kohl's jewelry that my dad bought for Noelle at some point that she never either he never gave her or whatever. But one of the things was my dad's high school class ring that I
Oh,
didn't
that's
know existed, to be
I
honest.
love that.
I
Did
love it
Dad
too.
wear it on his pinky?
Well, I don't know. My other fingers are too fat, so it's gonna
It's
have to be
weird,
on my.
like seeing it on you. You know how, like, when because I have my mom's ring. It's weird seeing it on you because it reminds me of Dad's hand.
Yeah, I don't know. But so I mean that's one thing. And then but another thing I thought of is like sometimes, and I haven't had a dream recently, but like sometimes when I like have a dream and my parents are in it, I wake up and I've told people about this before and they're like, "Oh, does that like make you sad?" And I'm like, "No, not at all." Like when I wake up from a dream that like one or both my parents was in, I'm like I wake up and I'm like, "Wow, I'm so grateful that I just got that extra time with them." Like to
Yeah.
me, it feels like a couple extra moments. Like it feels real. And so I feel like that's a glimmer that I encounter regularly. It's a lot of small things. It's like when my friends send me like a video of their daughter like saying, "Hi, Uncle Neal," or like when I get a photo from Beth or from my friend in Chicago of like their baby bump, or like
You're so grown up now. You're a big boy now, Neil.
or even like when it's like me and Russell, like my boyfriend, just like sitting on the couch and like goofing off and like not even saying anything, but just like laughing
Yeah.
hysterically about absolutely nothing. Like that is such a glimmer. Or most importantly, when I look at my phone and I have
Aw,
this photo of Radar as my background, it just makes my day. I love him so much and I miss him.
so
He's so
sweet.
excited to see you.
And let me just point out, wait, no, I have a really deep moment here, real fast. Let me point out that all of your glimmers were small items as far as like the little things, as you call them, the little things. So you're not picking out like when I went to Morocco, when I went to this, when I saw this place, you were looking at the ring and your friends' children or their baby bumps and just having that moment with Russell, which I think is unbelievable that you're able to do such a vast amount of things, but always come back to the little things and the daily things that you appreciate.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so good.
I had
Good
to
job.
point that out.
I
I'm
will
very
be
deep today.
I will be editing that out, but good job, Jenna.
That was so deep. I'm
I'm just kidding.
gonna say lots of S's right now just to piss you off.
Well, Beth has to go make me some ramen. She's so hungry all the time. Thank you, Neil. We'll definitely do this again because I feel like we could all just talk for hours, couldn't we?
I agree.
Yeah, I feel like there's so much more. There's so
Yeah.
much more that could be said, like on so many topics. I feel like we just kind of scratched the surface. But this was,
Did you like it? Was it better than you thought?
yeah, this was great. I mean, it was just like, it was just hanging out.
Exactly.
that's
That's
very
what we
much us.
want.
No, I like it. I guess I was just nervous, but then I guess, I don't know. I guess I was just nervous for like not being, that I wouldn't be like prepared or wouldn't be able
Right.
to, what's the word? Like
You
I
did,
wouldn't be
you
able
did fantastic. Articulate and
to
you did.
exactly.
Once we started talking to people, we're like, "Oh, this is super easy. Like, this is exactly what we want." I was editing the first
Yeah,
conversation we
much
had
better.
with Kathy, and I was going through, and I forgot how we were talking about how I made a lot of slime during COVID, like just like the dumbest shit.
God, I
She did
forgot.
make a lot of slime. She
Yeah.
So
did
much
make a lot
slime.
of slime. She and Tess were making lots of slime.
Making so much slime. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Life and Death podcast. Please be sure to leave us a review and comment to let us know what you thought of the episode. And don't forget to follow us so you never miss an update. You can email us at lifeanddeathpodcast@gmail.com. You'll find Genna on Instagram under the handle Genna Marie Life Coaching, and I, Noelle, can be found at Noelle E. Carlin.
Living death through ups and downs, finding smiles beyond the frowns. Stay with us, we'll light the way. See you next time, bright and gay.